Does everything boil down to physics, to physical interactions of like component parts? In other words, you could say, well, society, what is that really made out of? It's made out of people. Okay, well, what explains how people interact? Psychology. Well, what explains psychology? What does psychology boil down to? Biology, the chemistry of your body, your organs, and then that really boils down to like your cells, right? They have a smaller component, your cells. And then, well, what are your cells really? I mean, what explains how those work? Well, they're explained in terms of their component parts, of molecules and compounds and that sort of thing. Okay, well, then those are explainable in terms of atoms, right? Well, then the atoms are explainable in terms of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And then we go further, and the protons and neutrons and electrons are explained in terms of quantum physics, of quarks and subatomic particles and that kind of thing. So the idea is, hey, everything in the end, you, me, everything, we boil down to these some sort of fundamental component parts, that everything is explainable in terms of some sort of fundamental component parts. And if you want to bring in the supernatural and say that there's a soul, or that there exists a God, or anything supernatural, whether it be ghosts or demons or angels or fairies or whatever, that's supernatural nonsense. And how dare you bring that up when science has just explained everything in terms of component parts and in terms of just physical processes. And who knows, one day, whatever thing we can explain that you explain in terms of, magic and superstition and supernatural stuff and God, one day we'll be able to explain that too in terms of science, in terms of physical processes, of matter, of stuff. Okay, so let's take a second and analyze this. First of all, we can see that we run into a problem if we say that everything boils down to a component part. Because no matter what we do, like we said, you boil down to organs, the organs boil down to cells, the cells boil down to mitochondria and all that, and then that stuff boils down to compounds, and these compounds boil down to carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen boil down to electrons, protons, neutrons. It's going to keep going forever. Because no matter what you run into, you could say, well, that's explainable in terms of its component parts. Okay, what about this next thing, the hooga 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 thing? Well, it's explainable in terms of its component parts. Well, that's going to go on forever. It cannot go on forever, and we can tell this mathematically. Let's imagine that we had an infinitely large barrel of apples. And let's say that you took out of the barrel all of the odd numbered apples. You labeled all of them, you numbered all of them, and how many of them are odd? Well, every other one is an odd numbered apple. So if you take out all the odd numbered apples, then that's an infinite number of apples that you took out of there. So now, how many apples are left in there? Well, all of the even-numbered apples are left in there. But the even-numbered apples, how many is that? Well, that's an infinite number. There's an infinite number of even numbers from 0 to infinity. There's also an infinite number of odd numbers. So infinity minus infinity equals infinity. Well, let's say we took all the apples out. Well, then we would have 0 apples in the barrel. Well, how many apples did we take out? An infinite number. So infinity minus infinity equals 0. So how can infinity minus infinity equal infinity and 0? Well, let's try this. Let's number all the apples to 100,000 and then take out all the rest. How many did we take out? Infinity. How many are left? 100,000. In fact, you can do this and you can get any number. You can subtract infinity from infinity and get absolutely any number. So it's a mathematical absurdity to have an infinite number of things, and this is what in philosophy we call the infinite regress problem. You can't go back infinitely with your past causes. You have to the buck has to stop somewhere with some sort of fundamental component. So, yeah, we explain things in terms of some sort of component particle or part, you, me, it, everything, but eventually that's going to get back to some sort of fundamental component. Now, let's ask questions about that fundamental component. What would it be like? What can we know about it? Because it has to exist, or unless we already are at the fundamental component, but there has to be something that just exists, right? Everything can't be explainable in terms of a smaller part. So, this fundamental component, does it exist because something else created it? Or does it exist because of itself, just on its own? In other words, in philosophy we say, does it exist contingently or does it exist non-contingently? So that may sound fancy, but all it means is, if something exists contingently, then its existence is contingent on another thing. So, for example, here I have this Bible. Somewhere there's a printing press that printed this Bible. If it wasn't for the printing press, this Bible wouldn't exist. But a non-contingent thing would be something like 1 + 1 = 2 is a fact. It's not really an entity, but it's a fact. And there's nothing that makes that true. In other words, the statement, this Bible exists, is true because of the printing press that it printed it. And without that printing press, that other thing, this thing wouldn't exist. But 1 + 1 = 2 is not contingent on anything else. It's just true because of itself. Because of what it is, it just has to be true. Okay? Well, the fundamental component would have to exist non-contingently, right? Because whatever other thing that created it or that caused it to be would still be explainable in terms of the fundamental components itself, right? Whatever that thing is, it would all go back to that fundamental thing. So there has to be some sort of fundamental thing. Now you could say that the fundamental thing just popped into existence for no reason at all. Now that is not going to make a whole lot of sense, right? Because that's just saying things just pop. Maybe it just popped into being out of nothing, and it's not non-contingent. It's not something that exists because of itself. Like 1 + 1 = 2 is true just because of itself. Maybe it's not like that, and it's not contingent on something that created it. It just popped into being for no reason at all. Now, if that's the case, then when you come home today, and God forbid, but let's say you find that all of your stuff is gone from your house. And you say, well, why did that happen? Did something cause it to happen? Well, no, it could have happened for no reason at all. Because if things can happen for no reason at all, then absolutely anything can happen at any time for no reason at all. Because nothing has no properties that make it specifically cause only this or cause only that. A whole universe could pop into existence for no reason at all. A dinosaur could pop into existence for no reason at all. Your car could vanish for no reason at all. Your hand could vanish for no reason at all. Okay. Things don't happen for no reason at all. As the old adage says, from nothing, nothing comes. Okay. So, what this means is, this thing exists non-contingently. Or in philosophy we say that it exists necessarily, because we've ruled out the other cases. It wasn't caused to be. Logically, that's absurd. And then it didn't just pop into being for no reason at all. Logically, that's absurd. So, boom, it exists non-contingently. So what does that mean? That it exists because of itself. Well, if something is existent because of itself, then it can't fail to exist. Or in philosophy, we say that it has necessary existence. Just like 1 + 1 = 2, again. That is necessarily true. It cannot fail to be true. It's impossible because of what it is. It just has to be true. So, this fundamental particle thing exists necessarily. But if it exists necessarily, then we have to ask the question, well, how old is it? Well, it would have to be pretty old, wouldn't it? Because it can't ever fail to exist. So how old would it be? Well, I guess it would be infinitely old. But then we run into the infinity problem again, the infinite regress problem. Because then the past number of days that this thing has existed, or whatever particle piece of time you want, past number of seconds, past number of years, whatever, is infinite. Well, then we have an infinitely large barrel of apples again. It's just a barrel of days. And if we subtract out all the odd numbered days, subtract all the days after blah, 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 we run into the same problems. So the thing can't be infinitely old. But it also can't fail to exist. Which means that it must exist outside of time. It must be a timeless thing. Okay. And this is just a logical deduction. Right? I mean, we're just looking at this thing. If it were to exist, it would have to have these properties. And in fact, for anything to exist, there has to be some sort of grounding point, some sort of foundational point of existence. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about a beginning of the universe. We're just talking about for the universe to exist at all, there has to be some sort of fundamental just existence. Just reality boils down to this in the end. Okay? Now you could talk about the beginning of the universe. You could say, well, how old is the world that we live in? And you run into a situation where the world is infinitely old, or it has a birthday. All right? Now, the universe obviously doesn't exist outside of time. You know, and some people try to say that, well, we think time is happening, you know, and you think you're hearing me say one word after the other, boom, 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 but in reality, that's all just a big illusion. That's a meaningless thing to say. Because to say that time is an illusion is to say that, well, the illusion world, the world of this illusion created of this, the world I live in is this illusion. It is real. The illusion is real. I still see the illusion. I still experience the illusion. It's still the world I live in. And to say that it's just an illusion and there's a larger realm of existence where there's no time is exactly what I was saying in the first place. That, yeah, there has to be some sort of grounding point of existence that's timeless. But I live in a world of time. In my world of time, my illusion of time can't have been going on forever. It has to have been caused to be, unless it just popped into being for no reason at all, which makes no sense because from nothing, nothing comes. So what this means is there exists some sort of fundamental reality. Existence itself, at its core, is timeless. It has to be. It has to exist beyond time. In fact, this is something that the Bible has said about God for a long time. You look in John chapter 8, and the Pharisees came to Jesus and they criticized Jesus and said that, Jesus, you're performing miracles because you're really empowered by the devil and demons. And Jesus got upset with them, and they went back and forth arguing. And eventually Jesus told them that if they were like Abraham, the father of the Jews, the father of the Pharisees, then you would accept me, because Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. And they said, you're not 50 years old, and yet you claim you have seen Abraham? And Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. Okay, he didn't say before Abraham was, I was. He didn't say he was older than Abraham, that they had miscalculated Jesus' age and that he was actually quite old. No, he said before Abraham was, I am. All right. In other words, before Abraham, and even in the time of Abraham, and even before that, I am there right now. I am at that time right now. I am timeless. I am beyond time. In fact, the word I am is just the old Hebrew word for God, Yahweh, the name for God, for the one God, the Lord their God. When it says the Lord your God, it means the Yahweh your God. As best we understand how to pronounce that word, it's a really ancient language. But that's what it translates to, I am that I am. And you know what the Pharisees did on that day? They picked up stones to stone him as soon as he said that. They seemed to understand what he was saying. So, this timeless thing, we have to ask questions about it. Is it mind? Is it somebody? Is it a being? Is it personal? Is it God? Or something like God? Or is it just a thing? An object? Just matter? Is it mind or is it matter? At the core is existence, mind or matter? Well, either way, we can say, right, that at the core existence is timeless. At the rock solid, fundamental component, existence itself is timeless. What this means is that it would cause the universe to exist based on what it is. So let's see. Here we got an example. I'm going to get something right quick. This is an old remote control for a CD player. Now, if I were to push the button, the CD player volume goes up to 15. I push it and go back down to 14. Boom, 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 boom. We're up to 16, 17. Now, the reason that this CD player causes the volume on the remote causes the volume on the CD player to go up is because of the properties of the remote. The remote has certain properties, and based on those properties, it sends a signal that is interpreted by that thing over there. All right. So in other words, it doesn't really choose to cause the volume to go up. It just causes it based on its properties. That's because that's what it is. That's what it does. So let's imagine that this fundamental component, well, since we know that it is timeless, what that means is its properties are timeless. And if its properties ground existence, then whatever is dependent on that thing for its existence, so in other words, if it's a fundamental component, whatever it creates, whatever it's made out of, it would be timeless too. Or let's say it's the cause of the universe. Then if it's timeless and its properties are timeless and its properties cause it to cause the universe, then it would timelessly cause the universe to exist. Because the properties that cause it to cause the universe would never change. They would timelessly cause the universe to exist. So therefore the universe would be in a state of permanently beginning to exist. Or you look at it in the other way, if it's the grounding of all existence, then at its core existence would be timeless, and therefore there would be no way that time would ever come into being. So in other words, this world of time that we live in, you want to call it a dream, you want to call it an illusion, it's still the world we live in every day. The only way it can be different from the foundation of the universe, which has to be timeless, is if the explanation of the universe, the creation of the universe, the cause of the universe has to be something other than just a thing. Because if it's just a thing, then whatever it would do would be just as, and whatever it would create and whatever would be based on its existence would be just as timeless as the timeless thing that it's based on. You see? Just like if I eat a whole bunch of cookies, I'm going to get big and fat. Why? Because those are the properties of cookies, and that's just what they do based on those properties. And if those properties of that timeless thing are timeless, then whatever is based on that thing for its existence would also be timeless, because it's just derived from the properties of whatever that fundamental thing is. They would be just as timeless. So what this means is it can't be a thing. It can't be matter. It has to be a mind. It has to be somebody. It has to be someone. An entity. Now, this is getting interesting because the foundation of all existence is somebody and not something. You follow me? It's someone. Well, now let's see what else can we deduce about this someone. Well, this someone is timeless, right? So he, she, it, it's typically, it sounds like God, right? It's the foundation of all existence. We'll call it he just to make things simpler, but that doesn't seem like it really applies. But he would be at all times at the same time. He would possess all knowledge. He would know the future. Because he is at the future right now, and at the past, and at all times, observing all events at once, simultaneously, taking no time to do so. Therefore, he would have all knowledge. It would be an all-knowing he. So we've got this foundation of all existence that's an all-knowing being that has to exist. It cannot fail to exist. It is the nature of reality itself that this being must exist. It is more certain than my existence. I could fail to exist. But this thing, saying that this thing doesn't exist is literally like saying that 4 plus 4 equals 8 might be true. No. You can't disprove this thing because it's like trying to disprove 4 plus 4 equals 8. It just has to be. And what you run into with atheists is typically if you can form the arguments for God's existence and lay them out correctly and carefully, They typically just don't want to talk to you. They prefer to ignore that stuff. And when they do talk to you, they ignore what you're saying. But most of the time, they like to find people who can't lay it out carefully, who make mistakes, and then dance all over those mistakes. Just do their dance. Okay. And I don't like to shove this stuff down people's throat, but we do need to talk about it sometimes. So we've got an all-knowing being. Well, if this being is all-knowing and it takes no time to do anything, then this being could literally make one choice in its existence that comprehensively accounts for all possibilities. So it would only really need to do one thing, and it would be the ultimate act that properly already knew about that, I already thought about that, and I had that figured out, and I just did this one thing. It would literally just be one choice. One perfect, ultimate, complete choice. Why would it ever... There would be nothing more for it to learn. It's timeless. It possesses all knowledge. And so it could make this ultimate choice that perfectly accounts for every contingency, for every possibility, for every whatever. It is the grounding point of reality itself. So, this thing would be all-powerful. It would know the future. All of reality would follow according to this thing's plan. An ultimate plan. So, this thing, because it makes a choice, would have to determine the purpose of reality. This he. Because it made a choice. Because you can't make a choice. I can't choose this over this without liking this over this. That's just inherent in what choices are. So at the grounding of reality is someone that made a perfect choice. Complete in every way. So the purpose of reality, the purpose of existence, the meaning of life flows from this one thing. And that's exactly what the Bible said. What is the meaning of life according to the Bible? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That is what the purpose of existence is. So, that being said, we'll take a break.